Hello, and welcome to Shane's Microscope. I'm Shane, and this is my microscope. Let's take a peek. Today's sample comes from a potato. They can be boiled, mashed, and put into stews, but before any of that happens, I used my little DIY microtome to get some slices of it. I made sure to get a little of that potato skin in there too, since I'm sure that'll be interesting. And then I put some water onto a slide, put a slice of the potato onto the water, got a little more water on top of that potato slice, and then dropped on the cover slip. And we're good to go. The potato plant is known scientifically as Solanum tuberosum. Solanum comes from Latin and refers to either sol, the sun, or solor, soothe. The etymology isn't entirely clear on that one. And tuberosum comes from the Latin tuber, or lump, has the same root as protuberance. The outer edge of the potato, what we normally think of as the skin, is actually called the cork. That comes from the Latin quercus, which means oak, since cork comes from a type of oak bark. Just inside from the cork, we have the cork cambium. And if you recall, cambium is the tissue between the wood and the bark of a plant, and it comes from the Latin root meaning change, since that's the part of the plant that does the growing. And as we go further up into the plant, we reach the parenchyma, which comes from the Greek parenchyne, to pour in. That's the storage area of the plant. And we can see that, indeed, stored in this plant is starch. And we'll talk about starch more in a bit when we get to the main parenchyma of the potato. As we continue up the plant, we can see a vascular ray, and on either side of that is phloem. That's from the Greek word for tree bark, and that carries sugar around. And then in the middle, we have the xylem. That's the Greek word for wood, and that part is responsible for transporting water around, and that's why it has these tracheids. Those are these tubes you can see, and that comes from the Greek trachea, meaning windpipe. Now we see the inner parenchyma of the potato, and there is a lot of starch in here. Starch is a Germanic word meaning stiff or hard, because you starch clothes to stiffen them up. It's basically a polymer of sugar, and it's less soluble in water than sugar is, and so it's a great way for the plant to store sugar in a relatively inert way until it needs it. And then when the plant needs that energy, it breaks it back down into sugars. I think it's neat seeing all of these starch crystals in here. Almost look like little gems. They produce interesting diffraction patterns. And then on the innermost edge of the potato, where I cut it in order to fit it into the microtome, we can see there's a lot of starch granules that have spilled out. And again, I think they look really neat. Well, there was more going on in the potato than I had guessed. I'm glad we checked it out. Alright, well, I think we'll leave it there for the day. Thanks for having a look with me. Until next time. Keep on peeking.